What is up, guys? It is Joe. We're back. We're talking ball about the Cats. Today, it's K-State basketball talk for the men's side. Not great. Obviously, things haven't been great through the first 15, and I personally have been kind of shying away from this topic. I'm going to clear that up because today we're talking about everything. I've got 3 pages of notes I want to talk about for Kansas State basketball. Things that I want to see change, things about, different comments made here or there, things about the record, the stats, whatever. I've got a bunch of different stuff to talk about, and I know that you guys may not click on this video the same way. You may not want to interact with this video the same way. It deserves to be talked about. We got to talk about Kansas State basketball because we're not in a good spot. The program's not in a good trajectory right now for the rest of the season or the, immediate future. So I'll talk about that. Before I do get to it, be sure to hit that subscribe button if you're interested. I know this talk is going to be just maybe 15 minutes of a rant, but if you're interested, hit the subscribe button. I'm trying to cover the team more in depth because I've just been not making content. Like in the past, if a team loses, I'm like, nope, not talking about it. Because the best case scenario is that nobody watches it. The worst case scenario is the comment sections filled with I hate Jerome Tang, fire Jerome Tang, this team sucks, blah, blah, blah. It happens for football too. I've had people in the past be like, hey, Chris Kleiman stinks. Let's get him to, quit. That stuff is never something I want to curate. I don't want to involve myself in those conversations because that's just not my place. And a quick PSA on this front. I know there's a time and place for criticism, and I'll talk about a personal story here, but I like Coach Tang. I think he's a good person. I think he's a good man. I think there's some good people on staff. There's good players on the team that I enjoy watching. I do not enjoy watching the basketball team as a whole right now. There's individuals that I want to see succeed. There's individuals on staff that I want to see succeed. But I do think there's a time and a place for criticism, and I've talked about that with certain guys on staff in the past of, hey, I understand when you're going to have to criticize me. This is them talking to me. And I know there's a time and place for it. Just try to keep it about basketball. That being said, keep your complaints about basketball. It's lame. It's stupid to go, personal attack route for coaches, players, families. It doesn't matter. That stuff, like, you getting pissed off isn't going to change anything, at least if it's a personal attack. Keep it about basketball. Try to be professional. At least be like, this sucks. We suck right now. How do we fix this? Don't make it such a, this person stinks, this person stinks, this person needs fired, this person should transfer away. Don't make it that stuff, man. I'm just trying to keep it about basketball because it is lame. I get that people are frustrated, but never go for the personal attack route. So clearing that up real quick, but let's go with some background that's not going to be pleasant. I've got my notes over here. If you see me looking off, that's why. Let's talk about the win-loss column here. You've got 8 losses this season, 7 wins. 7-8 overall. That's not great. You're 1-3 in Big 12 conference play. You've got losses to number 10 Houston, Oklahoma State, TCU, Wichita State, Drake, St. John's, Liberty, and LSU. Wins over New Orleans, Cleveland State, Mississippi State, George Washington, Longwood, Arkansas, Pine Bluff, and Cincinnati, who was completely defeated in conference play. That's not great. The team has lost 3 in a row. They've lost 6 of their last 7. Things do not look great right now in Manhattan. The fan base isn't showing up to games. Players are pissed off. Coaches are pissed off. It's all, it is what it is. Statistically, the team is a bad team. Statistically, that lines up with what we're seeing on the court. They have the 13th best offense out of 16 teams in the Big 12. They have the 14th worst defense out of 16 teams in the Big 12. Your 11th worst shooting from the field, overall field goal percentage of any team in the Big 12. You're surrendering the second best field goal percentage number, so you're the 15th worst defense in terms of field goal percentage in the Big 12, and you have the 13th worst point differential of any team in the league. Now that the stats are out of the way, let me give you my personal thoughts. I won't advocate to fire Jerome Tang. I talked about it long in my podcast for different people being like, should we fire Tang? Should we do this? Should we do this? What I won't do is I won't advocate for somebody to be fired, not because I think he's going to be some perfect coach, they'll figure it out, they'll make the tournament. I'm not saying that. It's just not my place. I'm not the dude that's going to sit here and be sparking a momentum to say we should fire this dude or we should can this dude or this guy stinks, this guy stinks. That's just not who I want to be. Doesn't mean I don't have my own thoughts on the situation. Doesn't mean I don't want, change in certain spots. Just means I'm not going to be out here campaigning saying get this guy out of town. I know others will. I have no issue with that. I'm just saying I'm not going to be the guy that's banging the drum for it because that's just not my place. There'll be a time and a place when people have those conversations of, hey, what's best for Kansas State right now? I do not need to be involved in that. When the time comes, if for some reason they move on from Jerome Tang, if they keep Jerome Tang, I just want what's best for Kansas State. I don't care what happens, XYZ stuff. If it ends up working out with Coach Tang and the staff, great. If they figure out how to revitalize their time in Manhattan, they change an approach in the portal, whatever the case is, awesome. That is best case scenario. Worst case scenario, they move on from Jerome Tang and you hire a good coach after, I will still be stoked. I will be stoked whatever results in Kansas State succeeding in the eventual future. That being said, I do have thoughts on how to fix this is. And what I will say is this. The transfer portal approach they did this season was awful. It did not work. And I get to play devil's advocate here. I get that when you're sitting there with top 5 NIL money, the intention is that, we can get so many good players in here, so much better than what we had last year. The reality is you shouldn't have moved on from Cam Carter. You shouldn't have moved on from Arthur Kaluma. Cam Carter shooting 40% from threes, averaging 18 points at LSU. He is still Cam Carter. He's a stud. I know the fan base last season did the exact same thing they're doing to Tang now with Cam Carter saying, this guy stinks, get him out of town. It's crazy to me because it's like, I get he's going to turn the basketball over a couple of times. you're not going to have him out there to be a consistent guy that's going to take care of the basketball. You want a guy that's going to score 15 points and lock up their best defender. Kansas State doesn't have that on their team right now. Let's be honest about that. You don't have a guy that's going to be a defensive weapon. It's Coleman Hawkins who can get blown by at times, but you're not matching up with an elite guard out there to defend. David Gasson's a good defender. You do not have a Cam Carter on this team defensively. I would also go as far to say you don't have Cam Carter offensively either. That being said, Arthur Kaluma. You wouldn't have Arthur Kaluma and have Coleman Hawkins, so it's kind of an either-or here. But the point is, he's having a career year. He's shooting 50% from the field. He's averaging 15 points, 8 rebounds at Texas. This is a career year for him. There's guys that have gone elsewhere that are having more success. When you have elite NIL money, I get that the temptation is to reach and find different people. And I want to also say this. It could be Cam Carter saying, nah, I'm going home. I'm not staying here for any amount of money. It could be Arthur Kaluma saying, nah, I want out of town. I don't want to be here. The point is, if you use the NIL money you use that's been reported to elsewhere and maybe, whatever. I don't know all the money being reported, but the point is the money you have, if you use some of that to keep guys internally at the program, you're going to have that program you talked about with multiple David Gassons in the program. Think about that. Coach Tang talks about it after the game and says, hey, Houston's a better program with us. Yeah, that pisses me off. Yeah, there's things like that that are upsetting, but he talks about it and says, hey, we want to get to a point where we're like Houston, where we have multiple guys in the program for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. You do that by prioritizing guys internally rather than reaching externally to try to build this big thing. I know that the team struggled last year. It was going to happen regardless. You're going to lose guys. If the top of your draft board is, let's keep Cam Carter, let's keep Arthur Kaluma here, then we'll use our money beyond that to try to find guys to fill around it, to build out the roster. You already have a stud in David Gasson. Coleman Hawkins, I won't throw any hate his way because he's not the one that his money being reported was the worst thing that could have happened for him and the team, the pressure. There's a lot of stuff with that, but that comes with the territory in a certain sense. He's doing what he did at Illinois, though. He's not giving you some horrible shell of himself. He's still getting you 11 points, 7 boards a game. He's shooting not as well from the field, but this is kind of Coleman Hawkins' game. He's going to be a defensive monster. He's going to be good in transition. He's going to be, kind of that heart and soul of your team. He's going to be an effort guy. David Gasson, you knew what you were getting out of David Gasson. But then you have to go build an entire roster around a cast that features 3 returners, 2 who didn't play much at all in Buddy Rich and Taj Manning, and David Gasson who needed to take another jump forward. He did. He's a stud. You got it right there. Reality is, I would be much more happy with this team if they were struggling. I get it. First of all, they are struggling. If you're struggling with guys that stayed in the program, you're going to get people saying, why the heck didn't you get someone else when you knew this was the issue? So you can't have it both ways. As a coaching staff, as a team, as a player, you are going to receive criticism regardless of what happens. Unless you're winning games going to the NCAA tournament, there's going to be criticism one way or another. If Coach Tang and the staff prioritize Arthur Kaluma, Cam Carter, they do more of the same, the team's not bought in, whatever the case is, I get that people are going to say you should have gone elsewhere. But looking back at it, if that's your approach, and maybe that's a new revelation that Coach Tang's come to say, okay, I want to prioritize keeping guys in the program. If that's the approach you want to do, you have to make some changes because right now, I think it's a good chance you could count on one hand the amount of dudes that will return to this program next season, not into the transfer portal. And I'll say it here, you can look back on the channel, I was advocating for both Cam Carter and Arthur Kaluma to come back to Kansas State because you saw the development they have every year. There's one thing that Coach Tang does exceptionally well. I know he struggles at a couple of things, but he's an exceptional developer of talent when they stay in the program. Think about the massive jump that some of these guys took. Arthur Kaluma obviously come to the transfer portal, whatever, but you elevate his game from three-point land. He's shooting incredibly better. He's a good player all around, an NBA radar type guy. Cam Carter, someone you found that didn't play hardly at all at Mississippi State, comes in, starts 30 games on a team that goes to the Elite Eight. As a junior, takes a massive jump, averages 15 a game, 5. He's getting boards at 6'3", and he's still out-rebounding a lot of the dudes because he wants it more, and he's a dang good athlete. Defensively, he's a weapon. What would he be averaging senior year in Coach Tang's system if he's averaging 14 as a junior? Probably 18 points, probably shooting 40% from 3. He's going to be the bulk of your offensive attack at the 2-guard spot, at the 3-yard spot, wherever you want to run him. And I get there's issues with that. There's issues with Art as well. He had a slow release. He's had some stuff, with buy-in, whatever the case is. But at some point, you have to give these guys the leash to go be young guys and make mistakes. I know Art and Cam aren't young guys. That's not what I'm trying to say. But for this year's team, what do I suggest? How does this team get better? First of all, I'm not so sure they're going to get better. I don't think they're going to win more than 14 games this year. They've won 7 already. They've got more to go. I don't really see them winning a lot of games. It could be as low as 10 games. It could be as high as 15, 16 games this season. It's going to be somewhere in that range, and the effort has always been spotty. There's been issues consistently that have not changed through the first 15 games. What do I suggest to make it better? Maybe this doesn't make it better in the short term. I have suggestions to make it better in the long run, and I'm not a basketball coach. Let me tell you that. My dream is to be a recruiter on staff for K-State basketball or K-State football. Even both. If I could do both somehow, be the first guy that bridges both, let me do that, man. I want to help out with Taylor Brad on football. I want to help out with Coach Tang and his staff on basketball. That's the perfect dream job for me. I want to take what I do on the YouTube videos to person because I feel like I had that passion for Kansas State sports, and I feel like I can make a difference. That being said, that's still a pipe dream, so I'm not exactly the guy that's going to sit here and tell you how to get better at basketball. That's not what I'm going to do. What I will say is this. At some point, if you want guys to return, think about all the guys that will be on this roster that have eligibility next year. Obviously, you lose Coleman Hawkins. Obviously, you lose David Gasson. You lose Max Jones. So maybe it's just 3 guys. I thought it was 4. Maybe it's 3. You're going to lose guys in the starting lineup. You lose David Gasson. You'll lose Coleman Hawkins. Doug McDaniel's one that's been in the doghouse consistently. He's been in and out of the starting lineup. He's had his issues. He's at least in the starting lineup for now. We'll see what happens there. I feel like he's probably as good as gone. That being said, if you prioritize these things right, because I thought Buddy was gone last year. After last season not playing much, I thought he was out the door. They prioritized him. They figured it out. They got the NIL stuff right. They got things worked out. They kept Buddy around. You need to give these guys the benefit of the doubt and say, hey, we want you to stick around in Manhattan. As of right now, you roll the dice with guys like David Castillo, Brendan Hausen. I think you roll the dice with Buddy, and I'll advocate for Buddy even to start. I think we are 15 to 10 points better with Buddy Rich in the starting lineup. If you can get a point where his conditioning says, I can go for 28, 32 minutes a game, his offensive production will offset what you're getting from other guys. I'll be honest about that up front. I know that he's not going to be the best defender on the court, but at some point you play to the guy's strengths. And I'm not saying they don't for certain guys, but you can make changes that will affect next year's program or us down the stretch. But I also know that there's a give and take considering you're 4 games in. There's still a chance you pull some crazy miracle and you win the next 12 games in a row. You're right back into things. That's a possibility every year, and I understand that Coach Tang thinks that way, but I want to keep guys that want to be in Manhattan. Brendan Hausen is a guy that wants to be in Manhattan. I would imagine he's back. That being said, I don't know how any of this is going to work out. If you turn the keys to Buddy at the 3 guard, have Max come off the bench, still give Max Jones 25 minutes a game, 20 minutes a game, 18 minutes a game. I'm not saying you cut into Max's minutes. I'm not saying you don't cut into certain guys' minutes, but the guys you want to keep around. Doug McDaniel is 1A. You want Doug to be back. Will he be back? I don't think so. You look at David Castillo. You can't let these guys be, young guy mistake type dudes. What I'd try to do is this, and I wrote a full list up here, so I'm just going to read word for word because that's kind of lame, but I'm going to do it anyway. Coleman Hawkins and David Gasson deserve to be playing. I won't sit here and advocate for them to lose minutes to other guys on the roster. I think both of them are effort guys. They want to win basketball games. They're seniors. They want to win games in their last year of college basketball. I think Coleman and DNG are out there. I also want to say I'm not trying to blame anybody on the roster. I don't want anybody to be blamed at all, but the reality is you have to make solutions. You have to make changes. That's what Coach Tang is going to do. But what you're going to do, I think you start Buddy Rich at the 3. I think you give him 30 minutes a game. If he can physically handle that with his legs under him and his endurance is okay for that, give Buddy 30 minutes a game. Consider playing by fall. Consider playing Ugonna Onyenso more. You saw Ugo come in the second half and be a physical presence in a low block. I understand there's guys that struggle with certain things, but if you want to build this roster, we have multiple David Gassons in the program, you have to give them the issue of you didn't pull David Gasson out when he missed free throws last season. Season before that, you let David Gasson play. You let him play in his role, star in his role. But when a guy like David Castillo steps on the court and plays 4 minutes, has a -8, plus minus margin, and then you pull him and he sits the next 36 minutes, that's not going to give him the confidence to stick around. And I don't know how these guys work. People could stay, people could go. But the point of what I'm saying is I think you roll the dice with 3 guys in your starting lineup next year. Some combination of Doug McDaniel and David Castillo. If you can keep both guys, great. If not, I understand. It's more likely in my mind that David Castillo returns. You start him at the 1. At the 2, put Brendan Hausen out there. Give me Buddy Rich at the 3. Work your tail off to convince some combination of Byfall and Ugo to come back. If not, use the NIL resources you have to find 2 solid bigs that can stretch the floor, that can play big down in the low block. I know that's not easy, and I know it's the NIL era of transfer portal stuff, so it's not going to be consistent, but I would have to imagine that the NIL budget you have this year is going to be drastically different than next year. Use what resources you do have to prioritize the guys you have now. But it's not all money. It's not all money. You got to give them playtime. If they're going to make mistakes, give them the leash to be young guys and make mistakes. I understand that they're going to go out there and they're going to turn the basketball over. They're going to take bad shots. They're going to learn. These learning experiences have to happen for them to get to the next point of their game. It can't just be perfect basketball all the time from young guys that haven't been in this spot. A dude that I want to see play more is Moby. I know Moby isn't going to be a guy that you're going to expect to step out and shoot the 3 ball, but his effort is always there. His consistency is always there of at least going up for rebounds, working his tail off. Buddy's out that way. You see guys competing for the basketball. In a perfect world, I'll say this, and I also want to preface one last time, I have no idea what's going on inside the locker room. I'm not connected like that. This is just from the outside looking in. My frustration comes like this. If you're going to lose games and miss the tournament, try to take the next necessary steps. If you want to do the right thing, go 1-0 every day like Coach Tang talks about, the next right thing is to play the guys that need to stick around. I'm not saying cut into Max Jones' minutes too much. I'm not saying keep Coleman off the court or David Gasson off the court, but you have to give the young guys time in the starting lineup to learn what you want from them. I know it's tough to play point guard for Jerome Tang. I know that's what he talks about. You have to let David Castillo go out there and play. Buddy Rich needs to start at the 3. His offensive production, alongside a guy like Brendan Hausen, play the inside-out game with Buddy near the free throw line, near the paint. Let his physicality be there. Get the tip-ins, get the rebounds, do whatever he can to be Buddy, because he has superhuman athleticism. Let Brendan Hausen be out on the three-point line. Let those guys play off each other, screen and roll, pick and pop, whatever you need to do. Whoever has the basketball in the hands, isolate the other guy in a mismatch, because those two on the court together are going to be a good change of pace. And even though Buddy can step out and shoot the 3, you understand where his strengths are. You understand where Brendan Hausen's strengths are. I know that it's going to be a toss-up of what's going to happen down the stretch, and I don't have super high expectations for this Texas Tech game, but overall, if you want to keep guys around next year, you make changes this season to let them see the court more. But that's just me talking to a camera. I'm a nobody who knows nothing, but I just like the sport. I like watching Kansas State play. How do you get Kansas State better? If it's not going to go better this year, try to make it better for next year by getting the right guys on the court. And who knows, man, maybe changing things up like this, letting Doug stay at the 1, kick Brendan Hausen to the 2, put Buddy at the 3, run some combination of Coleman, David Gasson, and Moby as a 6-man off the bench. Things like this can change. It can change the effort. You saw it last year where you needed to find spark and effort for guys. It took Dorian Finister. It took Taj Manning, guys that didn't see the court hardly at all, but their effort was already there. Go with the guys who have effort, but there's also some guys you have to play from their physicality and their ability alone. Give Buddy the keys, man. Give these guys the keys and work out the rest of the kinks. That's my theory, because right now it is not cutting it. You're not going to win a ton of games with the current way you're playing, and I understand that's basketball. I do. At some point, I understand that's basketball. But if you want to make changes, look internally before looking externally. That's what I want to say about the next portal class. And that's pretty much going to do it for today's video. I apologize once again. I'm not trying to ruffle any feathers and make anybody go crazy or hate me. If it happens, I understand that I'm a vocal dude, whatever. But I want to see this thing succeed. Whether it's K-State basketball figuring it out this year, figuring it out for the future, there's good to be had, and there's still a ton of games to learn stuff. So if you're going to learn and you're going to learn lessons, you'll learn it the right way. That's what I want to say in today's video, but guys, it's going to do it for today's video. We'll see. I want to cover the K-State basketball team more, even if they're struggling, just to give my thoughts about different games and outcomes. We'll see what happens. If you guys absolutely hate the K-State basketball content, I'll probably move off it for the most part. But that's going to do it for today's video. I appreciate everyone who did watch, and I will talk to you guys soon. Go Cats!